E-waste also, many of you possibly would be familiar, as a kind of a value chain. The way we discard the e-waste, where does it go? Much of it is actually collected back, but it is not collected back in a safe way. Many of you would have seen the rack pickers today, while they collect all kinds of things. But there is a premium market for e-waste which they bring back. But obviously, they are not trained at all in how to collect it, how to kind of safely handle it, how to bring it back in a way that wealth can be extracted. We must be familiar with this phrase, it's used quite often. Waste, wealth from waste. There is actually lots of wealth. Some of you may not know this, but there is actually gold in some of the waste that we are discarding. Real gold, not notional gold. Actual gold is there in some of the stuff that we are discarding. So we have found that eventually, at the end of it, most of the electronic waste ends up at 18 locations in the city. Some of them are known landfills. Some of them have emerged or evolved over a period of time as collection points. Unless you create a business model, an entrepreneurship model, and then that wealth that we speak about, which is available from waste, that percolates to every stakeholder community, nothing much will change. Thousand times, billion times? How do you propagate more and more of these kind of decentralized solutions? So I'll share some work which is happening in Hyderabad, which is also a very important piece of waste which all of us confront regularly, which is e-waste or electronic waste. And this is one subject which I look after. So I earlier when I had come in, I was not very sure what will I speak about. But when I heard these two people speaking about their own experiences, I thought it is best to tell what you are actually doing and know about, rather than speaking some very hypothetical, very conceptual kind of 30,000 feet above the sky kind of perspectives. So e-waste also, as we all know, is becoming a bigger menace, and it also causes lots of harm actually. Many of us perhaps may not know this, but there are many things in our gadgets, in our devices, etc. When they get into the soil, the kind of contamination that they cause, much of it is irreversible. If a particular location is badly used for dumping your electronic waste without any kind of collection or treatment, you can be sure that the kind of toxicity or the kind of poisons that will permeate that area, it will just support any form of living thing thereafter. So e-waste also, many of you possibly would be familiar, as a kind of a value chain. The way we discard the e-waste, where does it go? Much of it is actually collected back, but it is not collected back in a safe way. Many of you would have seen the rack pickers today, while they collect all kinds of things. But there is a premium market for e-waste which they bring back. But obviously, they are not trained at all in how to collect it, how to kind of safely handle it, how to bring it back in a way that wealth can be extracted. We must be familiar with this phrase, it's used quite often. Waste, wealth from waste. There is actually lots of wealth. Some of you may not know this, but there is actually gold in some of the waste that we are discarding. Real gold, not notional gold. Actual gold is there in some of the stuff that we are discarding. So few years ago, we have started this initiative in Hyderabad. This is again a multi-stakeholder kind of a program. It involves national government, state government, the recyclers, the collectors, the producers. As you would know, there's a law actually which is called extended producer's responsibility. So your responsibility does not end just by selling let us say, a mobile phone, but you are responsible for its recycling, reuse, etc. So again, like what Kevin mentioned, SWM, they are a fine set of rules, but the implementation is very tardy. The same is true of EPR also. So in our country, lots of these kind of green rules are replicated from the European Union. EU today is really at the forefront of bringing in very, very advanced regulation, very kind of planet-friendly regulation. But they have the wherewithal and the bandwidth and the systems in place to get those implemented. We emulate all of them. without really worrying about who will really take the responsibility, where is the accountability, are the systems robust enough. So for this electronic waste, we have decided to set those issues also right, instead of just relying that some rules on paper will help us deliver everything. Also to ensure that there is a very robust implementation mechanism. So in summary, what we do is that we have first of all mapped very carefully what is the journey of a discarded electronic device, and we have found that it is not a very secretive kind of a journey. It is very obvious if you kind of map around. So we have found that eventually at the end of it, most of the electronic waste ends up at 18 locations in the city. Some of them are known landfills, some of them have emerged or evolved over a period of time as collection points. I mean, people throw, but there is a chain which has been established, that it is picked from there, it goes there, and eventually it settles at one of those 18 locations. We have mapped what exactly happens in these locations, what is brought there, who does what, and again there is a chain. So let us give the example of a battery in the cell phone. Of course, while rest of it is also useful, but the real wealth is in the battery which is discarded. There are 3 steps which the informal sector does to handle that battery. First is to actually hammer it and break it open, which also causes lots of hazard, because to hammer it, you're exposing yourself to lots of risk. There are some chemicals there which can be very corrosive if they touch your hands and all. And many people in that informal sector, they don't wear any protection. They don't wear gloves and things like that. So it's also and I've seen some rack pickers who today have, I don't know the medical term for it, but they're rashes like things, marks on their hands, etc. Thereafter, using some very primitive kind of tools, some parts are pulled out. After you break it, some parts are pulled out. And then there is little bit of burning and some kind of process involved to loosen some of the stuff, because some stuff doesn't get pulled out very easily. So you burn around the edges, make things a bit more malleable, softer. Then you pull out some of the stuff. And then it is put in a box, collected. Then it goes to the first level recycler, second level recycler, and so on and so forth. So the reason why I'm explaining all these details is that the very first step where you need to begin is to take stock of what is happening right. And if you are very thorough in taking stock of what is happening right now, your interventions can be planned thereafter. So, I mean, to cut a long story short, we have taken stock of what goes on. We have conducted lots of awareness programs for all these chains. There are essential rack pickers who are the people on the ground, the feet on the ground kind of people. They send to the first level recycler, second level recycler. Thereafter, things become much more scientific, much more organized. But 3 levels of informal chains exist. And what do you really tell them? How do you train them? Is also a matter of credibility. So what we found out was, in the eyes of such people, let us say the rack pickers and all that, the credibility of the government is literally zero. So if you go there and tell them that I'm a government representative, I want you to wear gloves, I want you to do this, they will only laugh at you. They'll just not pay any heed to you. So who delivers these kind of messages? Who does? In developmental terminology, we call this mobilization. Who does this? Mobilization is also very important. So what credibility do you have? So we have engaged community organizations, NGOs, CBOs, etc. to do this kind of mobilization. Fortunately, some of these locations, they are in the rural, they're not in main hardcore urban areas. They are in smaller municipalities, gram panchayats, where community is much more closely knit, and therefore it is possible to find some community-based organization who enjoys good amount of credibility, make them carry these messages, etc. So that is one aspect which happens. In Hyderabad, we have a very nice, very credible institution, a very strong scientific institution called CMET. It's a Government of India institution, Center for Materials and Electronic Technology. So in association with CMET, we have started a Center of Excellence to advance knowledge about recycling. So what all is possible to be extracted, how to extract, and one very important principle that we are following is, rack pickers and the first and second level recyclers, they do all these things for some economic gain. They are paid something for every piece of, let us say, some part of a battery that you bring, you get some 1 rupee or 5 rupees or so. By improving the science and technology in this entire recycling process, we are today able to add value. But what we do now is to ensure that most of that value addition is pushed back to these levels. So we create an incentive structure, an incentive system for these recyclers also and the primary pickers also to follow safe and scientific practices. So we tell them that if the material that you deliver finally to an authentic recycler, or if you bring it back to cement, if it is in this form, the incentives are far more than what you would have done just by picking it randomly and throwing it here and there. So we have created an incentive system. And again, picking a point from what Kevin showed, the importance of entrepreneurship. So we have created a template that this is the way it can work. Recycle the primary pickers, recyclers, they can all improve their earnings from this particular chain, but that earning will only go up if they follow a particular kind of scientific practice. The role of community organizations to deliver this training, deliver this message, and make them adopt and imbibe those messages is again something very important. The advancement of science and technology is happening at a third level. But as I said, the way we have tried to put everything together is through an entrepreneurship model. So we have found lots of young entrepreneurs, innovators, startups as we call them. Many of them are today in this space. There are a few from Hyderabad itself who do this kind of work. So we have started working with them, and areas and responsibilities have been distributed. Some of them work in a particular geographical area where they take responsibility. Some of them take responsibility of working in a particular kind of product, some of which are much more valued than others. And therefore, through an entrepreneurship model, we are able to now scale it and replicate it and try to make an impact. While we have started doing it, we have found that many other important requirements are also there. So, for example, it's an equivalent of segregation at source. So how do you at your level, at an individual level also, how do you ensure that whatever you are discarding is being discarded in a scientific and a proper manner? So again, we have created interesting models. So there is a chain of stores here. They sell gadgets, etc., electronic devices. So we have worked with them to create collection points, discarding it in a reckless kind of whatever you need to discard to that collection point. You are given some discount coupons. So if you are buying your next, let us say, battery charger or whatever, you are given a coupon and you get a huge discount when you buy the next one. So there is a incentive also to now discard it in a responsible way. But at the same time, I would also be candid to admit that while we have started on these, the results are not yet fully visible. The impact is yet to be seen. The scale at which we want to really do these kind of things is still not yet there. Possibly it will take maybe many more years. It will be difficult to hazard a guess, but definitely many more years to kind of take this forward. But again, the very fact that we are speaking about it, we are disseminating information, we are trying to pool like-minded people in this initiative, these things matter quite a lot. And as we understood from the lessons that they spoke about, it all begins with the very basic level, that is the individual. The level of citizenship that we expect in our society, in our community, that is still very low. And I'll share a personal example. Many years ago, I was in charge of the Hyderabad Urban Development Authority. It is now called HMDA. It was called HUDA at that time. I was the vice chairman. My office was in what was till recently the US consulate, Paiga Palace. And I was coming to the secretariat one day for some meeting. So you drive around the Hussain Sagar Lake to come to the secretariat. So I was in my car, possibly I was doing something and the driver was driving. But just as I looked up, I noticed that a very posh kind of a car has stopped before me. A couple has got off. They're carrying some kind of waste and they just threw it in the lake. At that point in time, we were getting some Japanese aid to clean up that lake. I was in charge of that project, and instinctively I felt that I'm spending so much of money to clean this, and this person is dumping something right before my eyes. So I stopped my car, I walked up to them. Normally I don't do these kind of rash things, but it was so instinctive. I told them that, what is this? How come you're throwing, it apparently was some puja samagri that you're supposed to discard in the water body. So his answer was that, who are you? We pay taxes to the government. So what else do you want us to do? So this is the association that just because I pay taxes, I'm entitled to throw whatever I want to throw, wherever I want to throw, and then there will be people who survive on my taxes who will clean it up and all that. So the association with citizenship, personal responsibility, credibility of the government, all these things can work. It's not to say that everyone is like that, but it can work more at a very, very micro and decentralized level. So you have to create the decentralized model, the individual model, which all of them spoke about. But bringing an element of entrepreneurship is very important today. If you really want things to take root, go deep, create an impact, entrepreneurship is the solution. That is the personal experience that I have had. Unless you create a business model, an entrepreneurship model, and then that wealth that we speak about, which is available from waste, that percolates to every stakeholder community, nothing much will change. I mean, that is very clear. But the good thing is that many such entrepreneurs are now promoting ideas and concepts and models, and governments are supporting, local bodies are supporting. I'm glad that you brought the Siddipet example. The municipal commissioner there, I forget his name, he was the person who was very proactive. Of course, former Minister Harish Rao Garu played his role, but one particular officer took that responsibility. Hussain Sahab, I think that was his name. But regardless of that, I really feel happy that so many people are discussing this. If you have ideas and solutions, and if you want to take any initiative in which you want government participation, or if you want us to connect you to some entrepreneurs, some startups who are working in this area of waste, we'll be very happy to do so. So once again, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.